that the communication needs to look into compassion aspects. That helps in bringing creativity also. And the last is that they need to be risk assessment based response planning. I think we should be guided by science, including epidemiology like immunology, virology, etc. And we should continue to share lessons. May it be a positive lesson. All the lessons are positive lesson. All the lessons are lesson based on a positive development or negative development. And I think there is a fear among countries to share the gaps or the issues that they have faced. I think we should come over it. So with this, I'm really thankful for your patient listening. I really do not look at the watch, but I know it has really surpassed the time that was allocated to me. And I'm sorry for extending my time. And seriously, thanks for your patience. Over to you, Dr. Nazneen. I am not seeing Dr. Nazneen here, as well as
okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Deepak, as always, it's an extraordinary, excellent story, and I think everybody will agree. I'm sure people have a lot of questions, and I don't see Dr. Nazneen connected, but maybe I will continue. Before she joins us, maybe we can have the floor before she can ask the question. So anybody want to volunteer to start the question with Dr. Aravind or Dr. Deepak Kumar? Please. Viplata? Shifat, Dr. Nazneen is not here, so you can open floor for other people who can ask question. Okay, she's there. Your audio is mute, Dr. Nazneen.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
So can you hear me loudly and clearly, because I got interrupted with my connectivity?
Yes, I can. Yes, we can hear.
Yeah.
I
So,
can hear you loud and clear, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because I lost the connectivity, I had to change my laptop, so I got connected again. So thank you. So bearing with us. It was Dr. Deepak, are you done with your presentation? Because I got disconnected.
He is so very much done.
Okay,
please don't ask me to start again.
I'm so sorry about that. Okay, I got it. Disconnectivity.
For your connection.
So just to share with and not taking much of the time, thank you very much. It was such a, I mean, you know, a candid presentation. I was thinking like instead of going for a tour, entertaining tour across the sub countries, you made a kind of a very COVID kind of knowledge tour. And I'm sure it is so much interactive and educative kind of, you know, like as if we are in a class. It's not a seminar, like a class type of. So I was also enjoying so much. I'm sure every of the participants enjoyed this sharing because it's so much of cross-country comparison. At the same time, I got to learn very clearly about this flattening issue. So the flattening is just a kind of an understanding for us. What are the multifactorial kind of intervention really help in flattening? So that knowledge has been very clarified through your presentation. I'm sure everyone will echo with me. So I'm not taking much of the time. Dr. Arvind, you made a kind of a very kind of children health care and the pediatric care and how the COVID kind of, you know, reality and we can take care of these children and pediatric issues. Very clarified presentation you made, and at the same time, Dr. Deepak made more kind of a public health. I'm sure Dr. Salim will be in between. So I will request Dr. Salim to talk maybe 10 minutes in between to connect this to two kind of presenters and in Bangladesh context. And then we'll try to go back to the floor sharing because I saw there are some pertinent questions. So we can come back again to Dr. Salim, Dr. Arvind and Dr. Deepak with the floor questions. And I had some question. I was tempted to ask the questions, but as you presented so interestingly, so my questions, most of the questions are taken care of. but I will try to back in with the floor question so we can get into that. So please, the participants that I can answer, you all are there. Please bear with us. We have your questions in the chat box. We'll read through those. But before that, I would request Dr. Selim to get the connectivity of the talk from a Bangladesh point of view so that we get this kind of totality of understanding in multiple angle. And I will request you to be little short. I'm so sorry that we had to lose some of the time in between because of the connectivity. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Actually, I will keep the mind in time in mind. Bangladesh has been doing more or less great because we have resource limitation. You know, the champion countries which WHO defines of the magic they have done a very good thing in 4 areas, like good national commitment from the government, and they do testing, contact tracing, isolation and quarantine, establish good non-pharmaceutical interventions, and they have a very good community participations. What Bangladesh has done is, we have a national commitment. Our Prime Minister Office takes care of all activities supervision. We have developed our national preparedness and response plan with multi-sectoral involvement in February, and it was overdone in March. We do testing. We have more than 80 labs in Bangladesh now, though we are a very small country with huge number of people. Compared to India, we are less number of people, but other than all South Asian countries, we are second in position. So that is why we have a resource limitation. We have capacity building in our point of entries, and we have linked our isolation and quarantine for people coming from outside the country. We have improved our hospital management and care capacity, which was a challenge. As Deepak has said about the personal protective equipment, standard precaution and medical management, we have developed our laboratory capacity. It has gone outside Dhaka as well with PCR test. We have national guidelines for management of COVID-19 and many other SOPs and guidelines, like what to do with the dead body, how to go for the burial for different religion, how to go for breastfeeding and other many things. I'm not going to details. We have good, materials on risk communication and material development. We have developed media orientation. We have community participation guidelines and document for what to do during festival or big occasion like Eid. But the challenge is coordination. You know, this happens almost every 100 years. 100 years back, you had influenza. Before 100 years that, you had cholera. Before 100 years, there's almost you had plague. I will not go behind that. So nobody lives 100 years except the gentleman in UK in the military who walked around and collected money to tell you the story what happened 100 years back. That is why we think the last slide, what Deepak has showed us, is a way forward for the next pandemic. We should learn from this pandemic and prepare ourselves for the next pandemic. So I will keep the floor open and complete my statement here so that people can ask. But I will start with one question with Dr. Aravind. Can you say the danger signs in children, which, like you say, Kawasaki disease or TSS, that we should take immediately the child to a doctor? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Selim. And it's basically directed to Dr. Aravind and Dr. Deepak. Could you please get back to the question? Then we can open the question to the floor. I will take some questions from the floor from the chat box. So please take care of Dr. Selim's question first. Thank you.
Dr. Arvind, the question is directed to you, please.
Should I repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so what are the danger signs which quickly tells the parents to take the child suspected of COVID-19 to a medical center?
As I already said that the children's are 90% of the children's are asymptomatic and with a very mild symptoms. So parents as well as the clinician has to be more cautious while examining the baby, and we have to regularly ask the parents to make a progress chart as I had discussed in my slides. The danger signs which showed that the baby should be admitted to the hospital are like if there is increase in the respiratory rate, if there is crepitations, if there is fall in the oxygen saturation, which we usually measure with pulse oximeter, or any other danger signs of cold peripheries or signs of dehydration, or if the babies are irritable and not accepting feeds, as we see in case of other viral infections. So we are clear with it that COVID viral infection is almost similar to the other viral infections in terms of the severity. But the thing which we have to see is that we have to be more cautious, because child deteriorates more faster in case of COVID viral infection if the babies are having comorbid conditions.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Dr. Salim, if your question has been responded. So then thank you, Dr. Arvind, as well. So let me go take some question from the floor. So I heard few question, Dr. Sharmina Rahman, she asked about, I saw this question popped up. So she asked about that we are waiting for if we have to face a second wave. So how to tackle that, or we are forcing any second wave, particularly in the countries where we thought that we are managing the epidemic, particularly in the SARC region. So the second wave, how to handle, or is there any kind of foreseen reality around the second wave? This is one question. Anybody can respond, three of the speaker. Second question was basically from Dr. Sabir. I guess Sabir is a doctor, and Ananta Shaha. They are sharing that we are, expecting winter very soon. So what is the kind of, like the change of this pandemic phase, or what we are expecting of the kind of shift of this epidemic? Is there any kind of influence with winter? So let me take these two questions first, and we have some other question I will gradually take from the chat box afterwards. Thank you.
I am taking, can I take a question?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
The question the changing weather and the winter is approaching, and in India, we are having rainy season these days. So of course, it is a very big challenge for us that it is difficult to differentiate between COVID viral infection and non-normal flu viral infections. So we have to be extra cautious with the proper history, whether the babies are exposed to the infected person or not, whether babies are staying at home or not, whether babies are following all the standard protocols, all those guidelines which are given that they have to home quarantine, they are taking proper nutrition. But of course, the children who are following all the guidelines and are staying in lockdowns, they are less prone to have chances of COVID infection. But those children who are staying within the home but are exposed to the normal flu, they are less chances to have a COVID infection. But it is very difficult to differentiate between a COVID and a normal flu. But of course, if the babies are having the same comorbid conditions and they are deteriorating fast with the simple flu, then we have to be extra cautious that there may be the possibility of COVID infection.
Can I add something with supplementary question to Dr. Arvind? So, our schools will be open maybe in middle August or later August or, September. So do you have any advice for parents and children when they go for school? For school.
School?
Yeah. Do you have advice for parents and children when they go to school in coming August or September?
Presently, lots of debate is going on this issue, whether the school should be opened or not. Every parent is very conscious that school should not be opened and the virtual classes should be continued, because we all know that once the child is exposed to the environment, there is more chances of cross infectivity, either from the buses, either from the school, either from the colleagues, either from their friends from within the class. If the schools are started, of course, the guidelines should be made that they have to take extra precautions of 3-layer surgical mask, hand sanitizer, frequent washing their hands with soap, and there has to take care of the social distancing as well. We have to train our children while going to the school that how they can protect themselves, that they don't have to touch again and again to their face, to their nose, to their ears. They have to take extra precautions during the COVID scenario. But of course, there, if the school is started, it is very difficult to the manage the children's less than 5 years of age group, and it's easy to manage the children's older age group. So it will be a big challenge for everyone once the schools are started.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is so important to learn about this, because I'm sure this is one of the big concern when we're expecting that how long the school will be shut down. Some months after it has to be opened. So taking precaution and managing children and keeping them safe is one big thing. I'm sure every country is thinking the same line, and Bangladesh government and Bangladesh system is also. So they are taking some time, and this knowledge is very important, that how to tackle this and then also keep ourselves going. It's not a joke, that because children is a huge number of children, and to manage them when the school is open, and managing all this hand washing and everything to make it more secure into the country, it's a very big thing. So we have to think thoroughly before we open the school, that's for sure. So coming
As
to another, yeah, thank you. Yeah, you want to say something,
And
Arvind?
excuse me, ma'am, as we know that winters are coming, our kids will be more prone to other infections also. So we
Yeah,
have to take extra precautions
yeah.
regarding this malaria, dengue, chikungunya. So these all stuffs are about to come. So we have to take extra precautions and let our child to stay at home as much as possible.
Thank
Deepak,
you.
Deepak, you will add anything?
In response to the first question that was asked,
Yeah,
what is common among our countries with
yeah,
respect to COVID-19, there are key things that I can think of right now. Number one, I think the way that COVID-19 has been managed has progressed similarly across all the countries. But why I'm saying similarly is, you would see commonly that it was the politicians who led the COVID-19 response across all the countries. So it was politicians who started telling what to do and what not to do, which is unique. Never happened. In my public health career, this is the first time that so much all the ministers, all the national level figures or state level figures were coming forward in communicating to handle the agenda of COVID-19. Gradually, this ownership shifted from politicians to bureaucrats. This is we saw in the month of April and May, when the cases started going up and up, regardless of whatever communication strategies and testing strategies have been put in place. At this stage, since last few weeks to month, in most countries in SAARC nations, we see that it is the program managers which have been left to implement things. So this is one of the common aspect. Second common aspect is community engagement has been not very seriously looked at as one of the strongest pillar. I think any country, I've already shared and mentioned that those countries where there was a high trust among governance, where there was clear communication, like Bhutan, people really complied, people really followed. So they are the same group of people, but all they needed was clear communication. And in the episodes of poor communication, weak communication, like we discussed in case of Maldives, case in Indonesia, then people did not understood clearly and so did not follow. The third thing is we see that commonly the cases are heavy, or the transmission is heavy in areas which are densely populated. The cities which are more dense, you would see that when there is an outbreak, it spreads like wildfire. So these are three common things that I think of.
thank you so much, Dr. Deepak. And if I see over here, I don't know who the name is, Project PC. So the person may raise hand, can tell his or her name. So he or she appreciated very much both of your presentation, Dr. Arvind and Dr. Deepak. Ananta Shah, he talked about basically to learn about the winter time kind of, phase of this COVID and how to tackle that. So this is already taken care of. We had another question to Dr. Arvind from Project PC. It's basically how you are managing your clinical data. I mean, you are using special software for data management and analysis. So this is a very definitive question to Dr. Arvind, how you are managing your clinical data. So do you use any special kind of software? So this one question. And Dr. Maruf, he made another question to Dr. Deepak. This is basically, apart from physical illness, children are prone to increased stress as schools are shut down. Physical distancing keeps them away from their schoolmates. and friends, do you have any specific plan for that children? So 2 questions, 1 to definitively Dr. Arvind and other is to Dr. Deepak. Thank you.
Yes, of course, ma'am. Maintaining data is very important in all cases. And the cases are very less, no doubt at all, of pediatric age group, but still we are maintaining data on a software that is DOCON, and we are keeping a detailed history of the parents as well as the children's, and regularly we are following up those children's whether they are improving or deteriorating. Along with that, that software is also giving a facility to interact with the parents even staying at their home. They can share the report with us, they can share the x-rays with us, they can share the well-being of a child, whether baby is deteriorating or not at any time of the day. So it is a very helpful software we are using at our clinic.
Thank you. So Dr. Arvind, if we understood clearly from your presentation that India is, although the cases are in a kind of an upward hike, but from the management point of view, you are far advanced by the time. So already you have a very well set pediatric and children management, which our country can learn a lot from you. So you are already in a lessons learned stage. So that's really very good to know from this seminar. We'll take this information knowledge to some of the important and relevant states who can get the benefit of this. I will definitely do that, and Dr. Selim is also there. And I'm sure the participants who are from government and some other development sector, you can take this because, you know, it's a time where we have to learn from each other. Cross-learning is very important. So instead of reinventing the wheel, which will be very taxing for every one of us. So thank you very much. So is there any kind of question that I really want to, Dr. Deepak, there was a question for you, I guess. Physical stress and all this. Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Maruf, you have asked, thank you for asking the question. We have actually spinned the beans. So by that I mean to say that it is a gambit of, constellation of important aspects on management of COVID-19, which is psychosocial issue. I think we would need to discuss in detail on this. In summary, all I can say, a long story short, I can say that good parenting is central to ensuring that the children don't go under stress. Because you would agree with me, and all the audience would agree with me, that globally you would see that the domestic violence is gradually increasing, especially among children, on children. So there is a greater need, especially in developing in low to middle income countries, where there is less of facilities, and not only low to middle income, including you see developed countries nation also. As people are leaving their jobs, economic burden is there, people sitting at home. They don't know how to manage their children because they have not had a habit of sitting with children for so long. So I think it is a detailed discussion, and we can always think on deliberating on what are the various strategies. But in short, in summary, good parenting and finding out age-wise, need-based, age-wise, because every age would demand different level of attention, whether it's educational, whether it's involvement in physical activity, whether it is co-curricular activity, or educational activity, online classes, something which Dr. Arvind mentioned, like Zumba's classes. So those are certain things which can help child involved in creative work and leave their energy out as they are full on with energy. So I hope you get my point and message, but this is a big topic in itself and it needs detailed deliberation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deepak. And just getting back to the question again, that there is another question from, it's Bipla Banerjee from Dr. Arvind. You just mentioned you are using a special software. My question is, this is customized software developed by your clinic, or this is open software?
It is a customized software. You can edit all the medicines, whatever you want to prescribe. You can edit all the doses of the medicines which you have to prescribe. And that software is having all the details for the duration. But it's a very easy and the simple software, so that it takes less time while managing a patient. You just have to click at the headings. The different headings are given in that, like gastroenteritis patient, cough and cold, upper respiratory tract infection with spasmodic patients. So there are a set of antibiotics and the medicines which we prescribe along with the doses. So it's a very easy and customized software.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arvind. So I guess this is a far advantage knowing this information from you, because in our country, the pediatrician or the kind of government hospital system, they can really see this software, can get instead of going for a different kind of innovation. If there's already innovation, we can get a benefit out of that and can customize according to our need of the country. So this is a very good information. We'll be keeping in connectivity with you, so that how can we, like, both the country can get the benefit of knowledge and the invention.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So the question sessions already started. So I'll be expecting some of the questions directly writing in chat box, and you can raise your questions as well by raising your hand. At the same time, I will request somebody can also ask the question directly. So I will request the both of the hosts who are managing this connectivity, please take care of the raising hand and then allow them, unmute them to ask the question directly. That will be really appreciated. Thank you.
No one raising hand.
Just to add with Deepak.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you, Sifat. Please take care of that. Huh? Thank you. Yeah.
Can I add with Deepak something
Yeah,
about the
please, yeah.
success story?
Yes, please.
So, you know, Deepak, the countries you mentioned in Southeast Asia, like Thailand, Singapore, Korea, and, you know, New Zealand or Australia, in some country in Europe even, but not USA, though they scored highest in National Action Plan for Health Security. They failed. So the National Health Action Plan for Health Security, whatever is written, which you were involved with, and while you were here, you were doing it in Bangladesh, but we got stuck up in December. That tells you a One Health approach or multi-sectoral approach, how to handle this type of pandemics. So the last slide you presented, the lesson learned and what to do in future, and the National Action Plan which countries are preparing, I think, it's my personal view, I think these are the way out for our next pandemic preparedness. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, Salim sir, we have, I think more than me, you have seen in your life and handled so many outbreaks. One of the most common challenge that we see
Excuse me, Dr. Deepak.
in
Can
operationalizing.
you speak louder, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Dr.
So-
Rashmi, she
Little
is
louder,
telling,
please.
yeah, yes,
Sure.
yes, thank you.
Sure. So I was saying that, you know, Dr. Salim has wealth of experience. He has seen so many outbreaks more than me. I just had a couple of outbreaks in large scale. But one of the most common challenge that we see is that the program managers usually, and I would say consistently, fail to recognize the capacity of the community. The community engagement plan comes exactly in the fag end of the strategic planning or operationalization and implementation, which should be central. You know, unless you involve community, you cannot get over with everything. Government, you know, in countries like India and Bangladesh, in next 10 years also, we will not be able to match up with the quality health standard like we see in Sweden or in Austria or in European country, in Australia, like Dr. Salim was saying. We would need to involve community. We need to give ownership to the community, build a social auditing system at the community level, that the community leaders should be responsible for the group of population or the group of houses, that he should be communicating to the higher officials on any disease episodes, events, episodes, on those kind of things, which is not there. I think I agree with you, Dr. Salim, that the presentation which I shared, I started by saying that political and community engagement is central, followed by risk-based assessment. You know, people don't, usually we see that government just institute strategies. They say this is good for the entire nation. No, it does not happen like this. In India, the need in Maharashtra are different than in Northeast. Need in Jammu Kashmir are different than in need in Madhya Pradesh. Similarly, the need in Chittagong are different than in Rajshahi, are different than in Barishal, are different than in Dhaka. So a need-based targeted intervention need to be done. And how would you identify the need? Only through a detailed risk assessment approach, which should be put in place. I think there are so many gaps that need to be plugged in from the policy to implementation level. There is a whole gamut of small to big gaps, right from the top to bottom, and all of them need to be looked into holistically.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. So I'm sure, Dr. Salim, your question has been taken care of, and it's so important to learn that the multi-venture that you mentioned about multi-countries. So some are good, some are tested, some are failed. But if we can pick and make a kind of a chain of the multi-venture interventions, lessons learned from our multi-country, really can take care of this epidemic, maybe even further better in every country pandemic. So coming to this lessons learned, and communication is very important, as we could understand. Communication is especially very important in this COVID situation. So coming back to questions, some of the questions from the chat box, if I see Mr. Arifur Rahman, he's a team member of us. He made a very specific question, what are the psychological effects of COVID-19 on children? So I'm sure the question is to Dr. Arvind, particularly newborn baby. So this is a very specific question. And then Anindita, she asked about, Deepak, what would be your suggestion, that is measures to be taken in preventing increased rate of this COVID-19 in Rohingya camps? So, and the third question, that is, can pregnant women pass coronavirus to unborn children? So the two of the questions related to Dr. Arvind, and then other is with Dr. Deepak at the moment. Thank you.
I would like to answer that these two questions are very, very interesting questions as asked by Dr. Rahman. I mean, psychological stress is the only stress which we are facing in our practice. Babies are not at all infected, not at into the severe conditions, but the main problem which clinician has to face is the psychological stress. Our children who are above than the age of 10 years, going through the media, going to the Google, they said, ki if I am having a symptom of cough and cold, I think my life is going to finish. So all these stress factor, if the symptoms are more severe, they say ki I am going to be hospitalized now, and I am going to be in the ICU, and I am going to die now. These are the various questions which we are facing day to day, daily in our practice, and it is very difficult to manage in the older age group of children. But still we are managing with different examples. We have to increase their confidence. We have to tell different types of situations, like the data of the children's, the severity in the children's, the death rate in the children's, and it is easy to manage at that part of time. But first and foremost important is to manage the parents. Parents are the main culprits who are transferring their stress to the children. They are themselves not aware of it, because of the lack of the knowledge. They are themselves stressed up that COVID means they are going to die. So first we have to counsel the parents, then we have to counsel the kids, and then it becomes easy to manage. One case came to my clinic practice, and he said, I am losing weight day by day. I am not eating anything because it may lead to some problem. Such kind of questions I was facing from that child, and it become very big problem for me to manage that 14-year-old child. But somehow regularly being in touch with that child, regularly doing video calling to that child, and even I have to go twice the investigation RT-PCR for that child, that you are absolutely fine, you don't have any problem, and you will be absolutely okay. This is what the problem we have to face. And the second question is also very, very important, that are the babies are infected from the mother or not? We all know that coronavirus is spreaded from droplet infection. So transplacental transmission is not yet reported. From India, we have a study from Maharashtra, Pune, and another study from Delhi. That was the prospective study done on 100 pregnant women. In those cases, they had followed up the children at least for early 28 days of the life. They had seen that not even a single baby is infected with COVID virus if the mother is COVID positive. In these cases, they had taken all the precaution in the mothers, like mother and baby is isolated, all SOPs are taken, proper hygiene is maintained, and breast milk is also tested for coronavirus, and that showed there are no signs and symptoms. There is no finding of any coronavirus, and babies were exclusively breastfed. Those mothers who become sick, in those cases, babies were given milk from the wet mothers, or the donated milk was used in those cases. And another study, which was from Delhi, only 3 babies were infected postpartum after 3 days of the life. So we can't say on the basis of this data that it is a transplacental transmission. We can say from this data it may be postpartum infection because of the breach in any safety precautions we are advised to take. So till date, no specific data is there that transplantation transmission is present.
Thank you so much. It's so clear information. Thank you. So coming back to Anindita's question to Dr. Deepak, what is your suggestion measures to be taken in preventing increased rate of COVID-19 Rohingya camps? So this is a very particular community. So, and at the same time, I will be requesting some of our these participants who are here, maybe you're from India or some other countries. If you are here from abroad, please raise your question, and you can raise your hand, and I will be appreciative if you ask the question directly. I saw just few minutes back, Rashmi was there. I'm not sure whether you are from India directly or you are from Bangladesh, an Indian guy. Or please, just if you have any question, you can ask directly. That will be really appreciated. Thank you.
Deepak.
So I know, so first of all, thanks Dr. Anindita. Good to connect with you. I hope you're doing good.
Good to connect with you also. Nice to see your smile.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope both your kids
I
are
asked that question because you have a vast experience with the refugee camps or like this kind of situations, as you worked in Africa in similar situations. So and you were also talking about Rohingya camps in our country. So what do you think that we should be doing to
So
prevent it?
sorry, yeah, please complete.
Thank you.
So there are fundamentally two approaches. One is a usual public health intervention approach, standard approach, which means communicating them about respiratory hygiene, ethics, social distancing, talking to them about, what are the signs, symptoms of COVID-19, telling them what is the nearest health facility, telling them, educating them on various aspects of COVID-19 risks that they can be having in their surrounding IDP camps. This is one standard approach, which traditionally people do. Another approach that should also be looked into, and that has already been looked into in Bangladesh by, if I'm not wrong, UNHRC has developed a strategic operational plan in Bangladesh, especially to manage COVID-19 among Rohingyas. And that has recently been developed. I think last month it has come up, a published copy. And you would see there that in addition to the strategic approach, they also talks about fundamental things like we should ensure that there is proper water, food is available, and psychosocial counseling is available for them. Why? Because given the point that these things are deprived at any point of time, people will not follow social distancing. They will not follow other protocols that government is advocating. So these things, both of them has to go hand in gloves. So government of India, government of Bangladesh guideline, BGHS support through various guidance has to be supplemented by a local level interventions to ensure that they are being given proper food, there is availability of proper food, proper water, safe drinking water, and ensuring that there is psychosocial counseling set up through clinic approach. I think these two things should go simultaneously.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deepak, and thanks, Dr. Anindita, to be with us. We will take few more questions only, maybe very few questions because it's already late. And thanks to Dr. Deepak and Dr. Arvind, you are with us, and Dr. Salim, because we supposed to be ended by, I thought that it is 10 around, but it's already extended the time beyond. That's what happens in the discussions.
Dr.
So,
Salim is my mentor. He's a taskmaster. So as long as he will direct me, I will sit here.
okay. Thank you very much
Very
for that.
kind
So,
of you.
so if there is anyone from abroad who are joining here as our respected participants, I would appreciate if you ask your question directly before you conclude formally. So,
I believe Dr. Rashmi, which you were mentioning,
Dr.
is,
Rashmi, I was expecting you to have a
she's a nodal
question if
officer.
there's any.
She's a national level officer in World Health
Oh,
Organization.
acha, okay. Oh, very good to know. Dr. Rashmi, I'm honored to have you with us. Would you please ask a question which really can help us? Because I tempted to ask my questions to save the time. So maybe that will be adjusted by your questions. So we'll be more knowledgeable through the discussion of your question, please. I would appreciate. Dr. Rashmi, are you there? Hello? Dr. Rashmi, are you there in the talk still? Dr. Rashmi, are you there in the talk? So we'll be expecting one of your questions from you because you have vast experience, you are working in WHO. So that question might help the other participants as well. And by the time, if Dr. Rashmi is muted, I'm going to write this to Rashmi. And at the same time, I'll be expecting that some other participants who are here, at least one or two questions, if you can ask to take that opportunity, otherwise we'll conclude formally. Thank you. Anyone?
Okay.
So in that case, I have one particular question, just that's not a question, it's a concern because the way we are looking into the epidemic, and at the moment it's my kind of field, working for some time in public health. I'm not gorgeously educated like all of you that you have handled and tackled a lot more epidemics. I'm not that kind of background, but I witnessed epidemic. That's what it is. So from that point of view, as a public health person with a different kind of background of diversity of public health work, what I could realize that when this kind of disease comes and appears as an epidemic or pandemic, sometimes in the initial stage, the world is suffering from knowledge crisis and information crisis, and the world becomes so crazy to handle it. So every day, new information, new knowledge, new evidence, and then you start doing that. So every time you're trying, you're learning from trial and error, and by the time the epidemic really takes its own course silently, it really very intelligently takes its own course by the time of our craziness. That's happening in our country as well and other countries across the world. So realizing this fact, my question is that, are we enough way we are trying to make kind of sense of this alertness to the society, that the society will be enough concerned about this, not as a panic factor, but as a matter of concern, because we cannot deny in any way that COVID cannot be a concern. It is already established by the time for a couple of months, 6 months experience, that it is going to be a huge concern for the world. So given that as a fact, whether there's something should be specially communicated, as Dr. Deepak was saying that communication is very important. What sort of communication really help to take this sense of the concern to everyone's head, that people become conscious about this, people take care of, and people started following the instructions and everything? Because to me, like the world, global people are not enough concerned and conscious. The concern and consciousness is only in the head of the people who are basically more kind of, attached to the epidemic knowledge, attached to the epidemic and social and economic aspect, they can foresee things. They are very concerned, but they couldn't translate that concern to a very simplified way to the commoner people. Even in the Western country, the same thing happening, and in Eastern as well. So is there any special kind of communication that we can translate this concern more not a fear factor way, but in a kind of a consciousness way, point of way? Thank you. Dr.
So-
Deepak,
so-
$1 million question to you.
Thank you. And first of all, I accept your preamble, which you mentioned about yourself. You know why? Because in my world of belief system, I think as we grow up in the ladder of knowledge, as we become expert from a very time that we graduate, we try to gain more and more knowledge. And as we gain more knowledge, we come to know of more areas where we need to know more. So it is usually seen that the experts often say that we don't know much, which is the expression that you said. So very kindly agree with you. And same is the expression that I go with. Coming back to your question, I would say that, I'll give you an analogy, and I'll share an analogy with all the audience. In my understanding, in my experience, small experience, the only time, perhaps the only time when I see 360-degree engagement to mobilize community through all the departments, whether it's health, whether it is, different ministries, there is a total intersectoral coordination, police, local authorities, administration, everyone work in the same direction with a constant good result, and the community is heavily engaged, is election in our countries. You would, if you recall an example of a recent election, you would see community leader, influencers, they don't even fail to go and knock the door of concerned people that, look, you need to vote me, you need to vote my party. This is the level of tiresome work that they all do concertedly. But do they reflect the same thing when it comes to important management of pandemics like COVID-19? No, they don't. They think that the COVID-19 management is the responsibility of health department. Why? Why don't they include it, why does the sharing of the onus does not go to education department? Why does it not go to administration department? Why doesn't it go to police department? So everyone has to come together. The community leader also have to come on board adequately, just like they all do in any given election. So I think I'm trying to give my response to your question in a very philosophical manner, but this is what I think needs to be done. And when it comes to what aspect of communication needs to build, I think any communication that is simple to understand by the grassroots worker, by the community people, by the simple people, is to be given. If you superlate it with technical knowledge, COVID-19, transmission, 21 days, quarantine, these are all superlative words from the technical world. But how would you want to translate it to a common man who is a simple rickshaw puller, who just want to know that, look, there is a disease. If he does not do XYZ things, then he may be at risk of getting the infection. And if he gets the infection, then these are certain outcomes that can probably happen. So I think that gap needs to be bridged. The community is wanting a simple solution, simple communication, while technocrats, while politicians, while bureaucrats, they give loaded communication, because there is a tug of war among them also. There is a push and pull among the bigger, you would agree with me that the fight is not within the country. Right now, the fight is across the countries also. Countries are pushing themselves hardest to prove that they are the champions of COVID-19 management. And in doing that, what they forget is the central part of the entire management, which is community.
Thank you so much. So simplification is the solution. And Dr. Salim raised his hand to share something, and taking last question about Dr. Salim, please bear with me. Does bronchoscopy help the diagnosis in COVID-19 infection? This is basically Muhammad Arifur Rahman. So he asked this specific question, I guess, Dr. Aravind, to you. Does bronchoscopy help the diagnosis of COVID-19? Then I will get back to Dr. Salim with your question.
Till now, according to my knowledge, no such no such case is reported till date. But of course, bronchoscopy will be helpful if we go for bronchoscopy with bronchoalveolar lavage, and we can detect the virus. But I don't think we will reach to that extent, because entry of virus takes place from the nasal passages, and we have a very sensitive and specific test, that is RT-PCR, so we can detect it easily from the nasal passages. Still, if we don't detect, then again repeated test we can easily get from the nasopharyngeal passages. But I don't know. I don't think one will require bronchoscopy, because clinical history examination with X-ray finding along with the history of contact, we can say yes, this children is having chances of 99% COVID positive. Very rarely to rarely to see such case that where bronchoscopy will be required just for the diagnosis of COVID-19.
Thank
I
you,
have, I
Dr.
have a
Salim. You
very,
can add, yeah, you can add something, Dr. Salim.
I have a
please.
very short question to Dr. Aravind. Now, how you translate to children from 10 to 20 about the risk of COVID-19?
10 to 20 age group.
Yes, yes.
Risk of transmission is comparatively low in case of age group of 10 to 20. And
How you inform them?
yeah, counseling.
Counseling.
I'm coming to that counseling. First of all, I will share the datas which are available in our country, that children are less chances of infection, and they are less chances of, even if they are infected, there are less chances of deteriorating in children and going to the death of the children. First, I share the data. Secondly, I counsel them about how you can prevent yourself so that your disease will not progress and you will not land up into hospitalization as well, or into the severe conditions. This is the way we counsel the children. Along with that, all the protocols, as I said in my slides, that you have to take care of hygiene, you have to take care of using mask, you have to take care of proper sanitization, regular hand washing, you have to take care of diet, regular exercise, and of course all the medicines which are prescribed will definitely give you the fruitful result.
Thank you so much. So we are approaching to 11 already, so we have to conclude now, because this is such an extended time and we couldn't even feel the time, because frankly speaking, everyone is so anxious about knowing about COVID, and we are really living in a world of COVID. So knowledge, there's no other, like I think alternative of having the right knowledge, right information. I think that is also a very strong weapon to fight the COVID. So we will try best to go for this kind of seminars time and again with the relevant topics, and we'll be expecting Dr. Aravind and Dr. Deepak once again. This is just a start. I'm so thankful, and so I'm sure that all the participants who were there with us, everyone will echo that it is such an important, we couldn't feel the time. So can everyone make a clap on behalf of on behalf of Bala Vanguard and all everyone? So I'm making a clap, and I'm sure my all participants, if they are unmuted, they will make a clap. Yeah, so they are making a clap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So basically, you both are not only knowledgeable person. I felt that you have a very passion to deal with the disease, which is very important as a public health person, that when you feel something and you take the problem inside your heart and brain, that's the best thing to work with. No? So it's a very good leadership of public health in India. India is a fortunate country to have this kind of leadership, I'm sure. We in Bangladesh also, we have this kind of leadership already started. So I'm sure that we'll make a mix and blend of the communication in future also. And I really want to give only a great thanks, wholehearted thanks from my end, giving so much of time and such a kind of an explicit and such an important knowledge by both of you speakers. And it is even more than our kind of expectation it was there, and the multi-country this comparison was, I was thinking, oh my goodness, am I in a kind of a classroom setting of, London School of Hygiene or anywhere? So something like that. So that was the feel. And Dr. Arvind, you educated us so much about the medical aspect of these. That was not in my, because I've forgotten already some of the medical things. I'm sure most of our public health people often forgets to deal with the clinical aspect, but we cannot deny, because when the disease has got a clinical phase and a kind of public health phase, we have to combine the both. So we try to make that combination. And another aspect that came to my mind, that the psychosocial aspect. So I was thinking like maybe in future, because I know some of the persons from India were very good friend to me as well. So we'll try to pull their kind of, it's a kind of a motivational speaker, they are mind healer, some kind of that. They are taking that role in India. So I will try to bring them into this kind of talk where the psychosocial aspect of the COVID things can be also combined and can be talked about. So that time I will be expecting Dr. Arvind and Dr. Deepak again to blend this very much. It's my kind of honest request, because please help our community, this way and that way. This is the India and Bangladesh, almost the same kind of community. So this is an advantage of having the knowledge from you and cross-learning the knowledge. Thanks all the participants who were with us from abroad and from Dhaka, from various diverse background, and also Dr. Rashmi was there. We are delighted to have her with us, but I probably missed her because it's quite late. So she probably left by now, and 25 participants still there. So it is like, beyond expectation that it's such a late night.
I think I'm the culprit today.
No, that we are so much benefited from this knowledge, and in future, we will be going to do some kind of seminar. Will be 1% talk, 2% talk to save the time, and some of the kind of session will go for an educative way. It will be more kind of training kind of. So then we have enough time. We can go for 2-3 days consecutively, and we can manage a very clear slot of knowledge. So we have to think and plan for that too. So thank you so much, everyone who raised the question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Bye-bye.
Most welcome.
Shubhratri, Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Yeah. And the host, thank you very much. It is quite late in night. The host, Jara, managed.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot. It was a wonderful interactive session.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
you,
And we
Dr.
really
Nidhi.
enjoyed. I'm sure our participants also enjoyed. Thank you so much. And it's a great, have a nice evening, good night, and bye-bye from our end. We are with Val Avantgarde. Thank you.
Good night.
So we are a team together in Val Avantgarde. Thank you. So Dr. Arvind, you are going to be part of us. Thank you.
Yes.
And Dr. Deepak, thanks once again.
Thank you so much. Good
Welcome.
night.
Bye. Thanks to all our participants. Thank you so much. And Dr. Sifat and Amar Ravin to bear with us for such a longer time, particularly Amar Ravin is quite late in your place, I know. So we are grateful for that. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. So we are leaving the today's seminar with a great thanks to everyone. Good night. Have a good sleep and stay safe. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.